I'm Elizabeth at A Literary Princess. If you are new here, welcome. I'm a 6-year PhD candidate in English literature with a focus on Victorian women novelists. And as you might expect, I love to read. Today I have a video for my 18th century novel project. If you are unfamiliar, I am in 2025 reading books from across the 18th century, starting in 1719 and ending in, I believe, 1796. This is an area of literature that I feel like I have not read enough of and really need to read more of, and so this is my way of doing it. So this is the second installment in the project, and we are looking at Love in Excess by Eliza Haywood from 1719. So we are going to start with a brief history of Haywood and the novel, as well as a summary, move into the major themes that I noticed, and end with my thoughts on it as a book. Please do be aware there will be spoilers in this video, so if you don't want to know what happens in Love in Excess, you should stop watching now. All right, let's jump in. Very little is known about Eliza Haywood. She was born approximately around 1693, and apparently we know the exact date of her death, February 25th, 1756. She was a novelist, a playwright, and an actress. She interacted with many of the leading literary figures of the day, including Defoe, Alexander Pope, and Henry Fielding. Fielding and Pope actually both satirized her in various works, and Haywood in turn satirized Samuel Richardson's Pamela, which I'll be reading in a few months. So, Love in Excess was published in 3 parts from 1719 to 1720, and this, along with Robinson Crusoe, were the blockbusters of the year 1719. Like, these are the 2 books that everyone was buying and reading. So Love in Excess is a very hard book to summarize. We are in France and we are following Count Delmont, who women just seem to instantly fall in love with. And apparently he's a very pleasant guy and he's very well respected by like the other nobility. But he ends up in this kind of series of love triangles, and really most of them are more love shapes. So each volume focuses on a different love shape conflict. We start with his love triangle between Amina and Eloisa. Amina is this very lovely young lady, but she does not have a lot of money, whereas Eloisa does. He is paying a lot of attention to Amina, but Eloisa is in love with him, and so connives to get him to marry her. However, this marriage is not very happy, and in the second book, he falls in love with Meliora, whose father has passed away and left her in the charge of Delmont. Terrible idea. So we have Eloisa, who has extreme jealousy. We have Meliora, who is in love with Delmont but doesn't want to show it. And then we also have a young lady named Melantha, who is in love with Delmont and is trying to connive to get him. There is an insane scene that ends this with Delmont accidentally stabbing Eloisa in the dark. It's insane. And then the third book, we move to Italy. He is in mourning for his wife that he accidentally, stabbed. And in Italy, he meets Meliora's brother, Frankville, who is in love with a young lady named Camilla. However, a guy named Citolini is also in love with Camilla and is trying to get her to marry him. And he has a daughter, Violetta, he's trying to marry off to Frankville. Camilla is in the charge of her stepmother, Chiamara, who is the sister of Citolini. And Chiamara sees Delmont and is like, I want you. This leads to a whole thing of mistaken identities, letters going astray, cross-dressing at one point. We finally end the novel with Delmont marrying Meliora, Frankville marrying Camilla, and Violetta dying out of love of Delmont because she's fallen in love with Delmont. It's pretty crazy. I feel like that was a terrible summary, but I don't know how else to describe this. So let's move into some of the major themes that I've noticed. So one of the biggest themes, I mean, really it all has to do with love, hence the title, but the nature of love. Like, what is it? And Haywood really shows it as this uncontrollable force. Like, it is a force of nature. It's like a hurricane. You have no control over it. And once you're in love, like, you're basically out of your mind with it. So Haywood writes, love is what we can neither resist, expel, nor even alleviate, if we should never so vigorously attempt it. Liking is a flashy flame, which is to be kept alive only by ease and delight. Love needs not this fuel to maintain its fire. It survives in absence and disappointments. It endures, unchilled, the wintry blasts of cold indifference and neglect, and continues its blaze even in a storm of hatred and ingratitude, and reason, pride, or a just sensibility of conscious worth in vain oppose it. Love creates intolerable torments, unspeakable joys, raises us to the highest heaven of happiness, or sinks us to the lowest hell of misery. At another point, she writes, when love once becomes in our power, it ceases to be worthy of that name. No man really with it can be master of his actions, and whatever effects it may enforce are no more to be condemned than poverty, sickness, deformity, or any other misfortune incident to human nature. So basically, you're not responsible for your actions when you're in love. It is so powerful that it completely overtakes you. And if it doesn't completely overtake you like this, you are not in love. You just like them. Okay, I don't know if I really agree with that, but okay. There is this really fascinating scene between Delmont and Meliora while he is still married to Eloisa, and he's kind of debating with Meliora about the ability for love and reason to be joined. And honestly, she gives like the sickest burn in this scene. So Haywood writes, you speak, answered Delmont, as though love and reason were incompatible. There is no rule, said she, my lord, without exception. They are indeed sometimes united, but how often they are at variance, where may we not find proofs? History is full of them, and daily examples of the many harebrained matches and slips much less excusable sufficiently evince how little reason has to do with the affairs of love. I mean, continued she, with a very serious air, that sort of love, for there are two, which hurries people on to an immediate gratification of their desires, though never so prejudicial to themselves or the person they pretend to love. Pray, madam, said the count, a little nettled at this discourse, what love is that which seems at least to merit the approbation of a lady so extremely nice? It has many branches, replied she. In the first place, that which we owe to heaven. In the next, to our king, our country, parents, kindred, friends, and lastly, that which fancy inclines and reason reason guides us to in a partner for life. But here, every circumstance must agree. Parity of age, of quality, of fortune, and of humor, consent of friends, and equal affection in each other, for if any one of these particulars fail, it renders all the rest of no effect. "Ah, madam," cried the Count, not able to suffer her to proceed, "what share of pity, then, can you afford to a man who loves where almost all these circumstances are wanting, and what advice would you give a wretch so cursed?" "I would have him think," said she more gravely than before. "How, madam?" resumed he. "Think, did you say? Alas, 'tis thought that has undone him." "That's very possible," answered she, "but yet 'tis want of thinking justly, for in a lover's mind illusions seem realities, and what at another time would be looked on as impossible appears easy then." Basically, he's like describing how he is in love with her, and it's like really not an acceptable thing because he is married and he is not free to love her. And he's like, well, but what if you are in love when circumstances are right? And she's just like, think. "But it's thought that brought me here." "You thought wrong." Meliora, you savage. It's hard to tell if Meliora is ultimately supposed to be wrong in her thinkings about love, because she is in love with Delmont when all reason says she should not be. But they ultimately get together. However, by the time they are able to marry, all of those things that she says are required are there. The consent of friends, her brother consents to her marrying Delmont, the quality of like social status and all of that, it's all there. So I don't know. It does seem like the book shows that love and reason are incompatible because love is this force of nature. But sometimes you can get there and it'll all work out. I don't know. I'm not really sure like what Haywood was doing with that, if we're supposed to see that Meliora's wrong. But I thought that was a great passage, and that was just the sickest burn ever. And frankly, I agree with her in that part. So if she's supposed to be wrong, then I guess I'm wrong too. This all goes hand in hand with another major theme of the novel, which is ambition versus love. So the editor, David Oakleaf, talks in the introduction about how, with this book, Haywood is trying to push away from the idea of marriage as more this social contract as a way to move up in the world, whether that's through fortune or status, and move to a model of marriage that is based on affection. So we have a lot about ambition and love and it not being compatible. So when we are first introduced to Delmont, it says, "The fame of the Count's brave actions arrived before him, and he had the satisfaction of being received by the king and court after a manner that might gratify the ambition of the proudest." So ambition is important to him at this point, and it is ultimately what drives him to marry Eloisa, despite really not caring about her at all. However, as the book goes on, this starts to change. When he first meets Meliora and basically falls in insta love with her, Haywood writes, "Taking one of her hands and tenderly pressing it between his, looked so full in her eyes as heightened her confusion and discovered to his ravished view what most he wished to find. Ambition, envy, hate, fear, or anger, every other passion that finds entrance in the soul, art and discretion may disguise, but love, though it may be feigned, can never be concealed. Not only the eyes, those true and most perfect intelligencers of the heart, but every feature, every faculty betrays it. It fills the whole air of the person possessed with it. It wanders round at the mouth, plays in the voice, trembles in the accent, and shows itself 1,000 different nameless ways. So again, we have love as like this unstoppable force that you can't even like hide. But notice that ambition is one of those things that can be hidden. And there is no ambition in his feelings for Meliora. He loves her. So after Elovisa's death and Meliora retires to the monastery where she was originally educated to see Delmont no more, he is kind of musing on things and all of these misfortunes, because Amina has also gone to a convent and become a nun because he compromised her virtue by kind of playing with her feelings and then ultimately marrying Elovisa. So Haywood writes, ambition, once his darling passion, was now wholly extinguished in him by these misfortunes. And he no longer thought of making a figure in the world, but his love nothing could abate, and 'tis to be believed that the violence of that would have driven him to use of some fatal remedy. If Meliora did not agree to write to him. So, like I said, as it goes on, his ambition falls away and all that's left is love. And by the time we get to the marriages, both he and Frankville are still living, blessed with numerous and hopeful issue, and continue with their fair wives, great and lovely examples of conjugal affection. Which just really wasn't a thing in a lot of marriages of this time period. So Haywood wants to move away from marrying for money and status and move toward marrying for love. The next thing that I want to talk about is the differing expectations for men versus women. So women of this time period were not supposed to show their emotions, especially desire and love. And that is something that continued way longer than it should have, because it's also a problem in Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility, which was published a century later. But yeah, women are not supposed to be outwardly expressing their affection for men. But men can do it for women. And when the women do it, they're punished. So Elovisa is madly in love with Delmont, super jealous of anyone else that he seems to like. And ultimately, we're not supposed to think highly of Elovisa. And she ultimately dies. She gets stabbed. Similarly with Chiamara, she expresses her love for, or her passion for Delmont, and is trying to like draw him in. And he is just like, no. He's like, not only is he in love with somebody else, but he also is put off by her acting this way. We then have Violetta, who's an interesting case because she's not necessarily portrayed in a negative way. I actually quite liked Violetta, but she also dies at the end. So after, this is so complicated. After Delmont, Frankville, and Camilla flee from Italy, Violetta follows them, but disguised as a squire for Delmont. So she's cross-dressing. She becomes very ill as they're traveling and is ultimately dying. And then it is revealed that it's Violetta. This is not a boy, it's Violetta. And she has done this because she's fled from her father and just completely thrown off all respectability because she is so in love with him. So Camilla comes rushing in and says, "See here the ruins of love. Behold the tyranny of that fatal passion in this expiring fair. But haste, let Count Delmont know the faithful, generous Violetta dies. She dies for him." And when he goes in to see her, They all go in to see her. And Meliora is like, please live and be comforted. Like, please keep living. Don't die for this. And Violetta says, no, madam. Life after this shameful declaration would be the worst of punishments. Because women are not supposed to be expressing their feelings of love. Meliora does it in private with Delmont at one point. And even then, it's a very tense moment because he is literally in her bedroom. And she says, oh, Delmont, cruel Delmont, will you then take advantage of my weakness? I confess I feel for you, a passion far beyond all that yet ever bore the name of love, that I no longer can withstand the too powerful magic of your eyes, nor deny anything that charming tongue can ask. But now's the time to prove yourself the hero. Subdue yourself, as you have conquered me. Be satisfied with vanquishing my soul. Fix there your throne, but leave my honor free. So in this moment where he's seriously about to compromise her honor and virtue, she's like, yes, I love you, but please don't do this to me. The men, on the other hand, sleep around plenty in this and toy with women's affections and sneak into their bedrooms at night like absolute creeps. And, like, that's expected of them. Like, that's socially okay. So when he's in her bedroom, he's like thinking about maybe he sees her sleeping and is like, well, maybe I'll just leave and leave her alone. And Haywood writes, if he had now left her, some might have applauded an honor so uncommon, but more would have condemned his stupidity, for I believe there are very few men, how stoical soever they pretend to be, that in such a tempting circumstance would not have lost all thoughts but those which the present opportunity inspired. So, like, the men were expected to behave this way, which is, and so he decides, I will this night be master of my wishes, no matter what tomorrow may bring forth. So I'm gonna do this, damn the consequences. But we're never supposed to really think that poorly of Delmont, I don't think. We're always told, like, what a good guy he is. And I'm like, sir, you're sneaking into this sleeping woman's bedroom and are about to force yourself on her. You're not a good guy. But okay. There is a scene where he believes that he is sleeping with Meliora, but it is actually Melantha who has tricked him. And he has no consequences from that. Whereas Melantha's brother is, like, pretty upset with Melantha that she has slept with Delmont, and it's been found out. But no consequences for Delmont, unless you want to count that he ends up killing his wife and then feels bad. But socially speaking, there's no consequences. And I think Haywood is trying to highlight the double standard of that. So, what were my thoughts on this book? Mostly just, what? What is this? It was so strange. I did not like it. I didn't hate it, though. Like, there were parts that were really interesting, but it felt way too long. It felt like there were way too many love shapes. I was like, by the end of it, I was like, oh my God, why? Why are there so many? Couldn't we have cut some of this out? I hated Delmont. I'm like, I'm sorry. I cannot like this man. He sucks. I hate him. And that is me looking at it with a 21st century lens, I'm sure. But I can't help it. Sir, get out of her bedroom. Please. And yeah, he gets better, but I don't care. Get out of her bedroom. You suck. I hate you. It's very theatrical. And I think I actually would have liked it better if it had been a play. And I mean, the reason it's theatrical is because she was an actress and a playwright. That's what she did. So of course there is this element of theater. And it actually reminded me of a play that I have seen called The Liar. The Liar is a French play by Pierre Corneille from 1644. And it's very similar with this guy that's just like doing all these things and you're like, oh my God. And there's a love triangle or a love square, I think. There's mistaken identities, there's letters going places. And it reminded me a lot of that. So, I don't know. And I really liked that play, actually. It was really fun to see performed. And I think this would be really fun to see performed as a play as well. I also saw a lot of influence from Shakespeare's comedies, especially with, the everyone being in love with one person, but they're in love with another person. And then we've got cross-dressing and mistaken identities. So I saw a lot of influence of theater, and I thought this would work so much better as a play than a novel. As a novel, it was just like, this is too long. I cannot stand these people. They really have very little characterization. I mean, the women are just like either passionate and awful or passionate and pure. No in between. So, and the men just suck. The men are awful. So, I don't know. And I think I'm more okay with that in a play because it's a play. You have less space to create these characters. Whereas in a novel, like this is 3 volumes. I'm like, you couldn't give some of these people more personalities. But of course, the novel was still a very young genre. It's just starting out. This is published the same year as Robinson Crusoe. Now, it was kind of a whiplash from Robinson Crusoe because that spends so much time on the interiority of Crusoe. And there's really not much interiority here other than Delmont peeling away ambition and going in for love, but that's really it. So I think this is probably more representative of a lot of the style of other genres of literature at that time, like plays. Whereas Defoe was really forging ahead and creating something new with the novel genre. So I ultimately gave this 2.5 stars. Like I said, I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it. I'm like, I think I am glad that I read it. Well, I am glad that I read it. But it was kind of tedious and frustrating and weird. Really weird. So yeah, 2.5 seems about good for me. That is Love in Excess by Eliza Haywood. For March, we will be looking at Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift, which is from 1720 something. And that I know is very different from this. And I'm excited to see what it's all about. I know a lot of people really love it. So let me know down in the comments below. Have you read Love in Excess? What did you think of it? What are some other books that you've read from this period of English literature? If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more of my bookish content. It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.